If the Q&A function does not automatically appear, you can open it by clicking on the button with 3 small dots on the bottom of your screen. It's not too late to invite a colleague to join you for today's BI Livecast. So if you know someone who may be interested in our topic, feel free to forward them the same URL that you used to log in. And for anyone who was not able to view live today, our fireside chats will be available to watch on demand after the fact, and our team will send a follow-up email with those details after today's livecast. For anyone looking for a dial-in number, our livecast today can be dialed into. You just open the same widget as the Q&A panel and select audio connection and provide your cell phone number for a dial-in option. For the best Webex experience, we recommend closing out any other browsers on your computer for the best possible connection. Lastly, we suggest viewing our livecast using the Webex grid view so that you can see all of the speakers at once. You can find this option in the top right corner of your screen. Also, be sure to engage with us on Twitter and LinkedIn today using the hashtag BILivecast. Thank you so much to Cisco Webex for being the official technology partner of Brand Innovators Virtual Summits and facilitating a great virtual event experience. We hope you are all looking forward to today's livecast. We're going to be hearing from some amazing marketing leaders from Aveda, Keds, Stitch Fix, and more. I'm now very excited to introduce your host for the day. We are so lucky to be joined by Nina Alexander Hirst. Nina is a lifestyle, content marketing, customer experience, and strategic partnerships expert who turns creative ideas into tangible action. Most recently, Nina was Senior Director of Global Brand Marketing at Hilton, where she managed brand partnerships and content marketing for Hilton's luxury and lifestyle portfolio, including Waldorf Astoria and Conrad Hotels and Resorts. Welcome, Nina. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. We're so excited to have you hosting today.
I am excited to be here. My third time as the guest MC with Brand Innovators. Always a pleasure. So thank you very much. And today I am thrilled to dive deeper into the world of fashion and beauty and learn from the incredible experts that we're so fortunate to have with us. We're now going to welcome our first speaker of the day. We're joined by Angelique Vendette, the head of social media and influencer marketing for Stitch Fix. Angelique leads content and channel strategies for the Stitch Fix brand across owned, earned, and paid channels, including social media, ambassador programs, and paid influencer partnerships. Angelique is also the founder and creative director for Petite Poussin, a sustainable clothing company. And this session is going to be moderated by Casey Saran, the CEO of Spaceback. So welcome to the stage, Angelique and Casey. We're excited to learn from you now, and I'm sure we will have a lot of questions at the end. So in the meantime, make sure you're typing your questions in the box and sharing on social media.
Great. Thank you so much, Nina. Hi, Angelique. Can you hear me all right? Hey, there you are.
Hi, Casey. I can't hear you just yet. Give me one quick sec.
No worries. Hello, hello. Mic check. Can you hear me?
Let me dial right back in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and while we're waiting for Angelique to get back in, I'll just let everyone know Angelique is such a trooper. She's actually on vacation right now, so she's managing to dial in and make it work despite being on the go. So we'll give her just a minute, and she should be able to get on.
Casey, while we're waiting for Angelique, I would love for you to tell us a little more about you and what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Nina. So I'm Casey Saran. I am the co-founder and CEO at Spaceback. I started Spaceback a couple years ago after being in the industry for my whole career. So I've been in programmatic advertising over 12 years and have just seen most of the innovation happen really between the buyer and the seller. And the user experience was actually evolving and seeing a lot more innovation on social media side of things. With Snapchat and now Reels and TikTok, and the user experience seems like it's evolving very quickly. So Our company is all about helping brands who are invested in their social media presence recreate those experiences in standard ad units. So for brands like Stitch Fix, I did a fireside chat with Pernod Ricard a few weeks ago. But partners of ours who are really highly invested in social media presence, and ads a lot of times are more of an afterthought. So we can help brands focus on what they're good at on social media, and then have that run as standard ads that perform a lot better than regular banners.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It looks like Angelique is back, but we'll give her a second for her microphone to come on as well.
So Nina, while we're giving her a second for that, tell us about your necklace.
Oh, my necklace. Pretty amazing, huh? I just actually, I popped into Bergdorf Goodman last month, and I was able to snag the necklace that's somehow most perfectly suited me. So it's a crystal pair of lips. I like to wear red lipstick. And, you know, what's a good statement? From my days at Bauble Bar, when statement jewelry was the only thing I wore, I took a little break from it, but now I'm back, and I'm down in Atlanta. So I feel like everything needs to be like bigger and better and bolder and crystal covered. So just
awesome.
Settling in here.
With the aviator headpiece, you very qualified to host.
I know Angelique is still working on the microphone there. I would like to say, Casey, thank you for noticing this. Being that today is fashion and beauty, clearly you are in your wheelhouse here and noticing all of these elements that we have on today.
Yeah.
I did not wear this one when I hosted the sports and marketing podcast. I felt like it wouldn't be as appropriate.
Yeah. Do you have a jersey or a favorite professional athlete?
I just love all the sports, you know? I'm just all about the sports.
Right.
But I went to the University of Florida, so mostly Gator sports are what I follow. But I have 4 brothers. They're all older, and they sort of forced me to watch sports my entire life. So when I have the choice, I don't necessarily always go to sports first. I love to play, and I love to go to live games, but I'm not always watching it on TV, so I don't have a jersey handy. I just wear the colors of the team.
Nice. Me too. And Angelique, I assume we'll hear from you when you're back. So whenever you can hear, please chime in. But I do love using this time to get to know our host a little bit more. So Nina, sorry to put you on the spot, but tell us where you are.
Currently in Atlanta, Georgia. I was taking a break from being in Washington, D.C. So I've been doing a road trip up and down the East Coast, visiting family, because I have so many siblings. So I've been spending some time here and learning my way around the city as best you can during COVID. And it's been really awesome. Unfortunately, in hospitality, you know, there's been a little bit of a break because of COVID. So typically, you know, in the summer months, last year, I think I was doing glamping at the 24 Hours of Le Mans with Aston Martin and Waldorf Astoria, and I was at Pebble Beach doing activations. And
Wow.
This summer looks a lot different with people staying home. But it's good to see that everyone's taking things really seriously, and obviously these models work really well. It looks like Angelique is back on.
Yes. Hi.
All right,
you guys.
Welcome,
Good luck.
Angelique.
Thanks, Nina, for stepping in.
All right, and Angelique, we'll get into it in just a minute, but welcome. So glad you're here, and thanks so much to Brand Innovators for making this happen. I understand that you're on vacation, so I did let everyone know that that you're on the road, and such a trooper for dialing in and making this work. Why don't you tell us where you are and what you're doing?
Yeah. Thanks for that patience, by the way, and thanks for letting everyone know. So we actually hopped on the road. We drove down from San Francisco to Newport Beach. We just got here today, so really excited to have some vacation time, but B, also escape a bit of the North Cal fires that are happening up there. So just looking forward to this week of vacation to, take some time to relax and enjoy the warm weather.
Nice. Yeah, I'm in Sonoma, so it's pretty smoky this weekend. So I'm jealous. Hopefully you get some blue skies down there.
Yeah, thanks, and hopefully things clear up there too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hopefully things are looking better now. But yeah, it would be great if you could start out by giving a quick introduction of yourself and your role.
Yeah, for sure. So hi everyone, my name is Angelique Vendette. I am the head of social media marketing and influencer marketing at Stitch Fix. I've been with the company since January. Prior to that, I ran my own social media marketing agency in Montreal, and then between both was with Sephora, also as head of social and influencer marketing.
Awesome. Yeah, and Sephora is a company that we at Spaceback have worked with as well too. So it's so cool doing sessions with partners, former partners. Awesome. So let's jump in with the elephant in the room. Obviously, Stitch Fix is a major player in fashion with a pretty unique model. How is consumer behavior changed during COVID? I mean, obviously we're not out and about as much in brick and mortar retail, but how has that impacted how people are using Stitch Fix, and maybe a good opportunity for you to explain the model quickly for the audience as well?
Yeah, for sure. So, so Stitch Fix is a personalized service where not only does an algorithm help select items that are tailored and personalized to your preference, so that could be anywhere between, you know, price point, designer or brand labels, all the way to style preference, you know, what you want to wear. The way that it works is that an algorithm helps select those personalized items, and that will be a larger number, but then an actual human stylist will go in and tailor those 5 items to be sent to your home, to be part of your fix. And so in the current model right now, we are fully online. It's a fully digital retailer landscape. And so, you know, we've actually been thriving in COVID. We've been doing really well. It's a place where our audience and our clients can continue to connect with us and continue to receive their fixes as they would have in the past, just because it isn't, you know, an in-person retail play. What's interesting for my role and, you know, how the landscape has changed is that, you know, before where social used to be a part of a larger 360 campaign, you know, now with rapid timelines and quick turn and just being able to be nimble and react or proactively, you know, connect, we are now the campaign itself as a part to being, instead of being a part of it. Another way that the landscape has changed is with influencer marketing. You used to rely on influencers to supplement, you know, your larger model photo shoot or your larger brand campaign and supplement it on social with their presence. And now, again, flipping it 180 on its head, influencer marketing, they are the face of the campaign. And then lastly, from, you know, just managing in social media, yes, you used to be able to see, okay, you know, this is times of day or days of the week where my audience is online. Here's when I should be posting and connecting with them. And now, again, a flip on 180. You know, people are coming to social 24 hours a day. It's a place where they are looking for a sense of community. They're looking for a sense of connection and two-way dialogue with brands. It's no longer okay to just be a one transactional location, but whereas it's much more, you know, two-way where your audience just has as much impact and as much to say. And I think that's due to larger consumer trends. You know, people are coming to social media primarily for 3 reasons within the current landscape. They're coming for news, they're coming to get updates, or they were this spring and early this summer, they're coming to get updates about, you know, what's going on, what does the coronavirus look like in their location. They're also coming to connect. So they want to stay in touch with family and friends. They want to stay in touch with, you know, celebrities and influencers and their brands that they love that they can no longer go out and connect with. So they're going to social for that, for connection. And then the last one, I think, that you and I and, you know, the whole audience joining today can mostly relate to is we're going to social to escape. We're going to social to escape, to, you know, get a piece out of that, you know, the mundane or come back to a place where it's, simplified, where you can enjoy, you're having fun. There's a bit of entertainment at hand. There's a bit of, I'm forgetting what's going on in the world right now, and I'm diving into my favorite series, whether that's, Netflix, or whether you're watching something on IGTV or long form YouTube. Yeah.
For me, funny cat videos were like maybe once a month type of thing, and now I can go for funny cats like every single day. So I totally know where you're coming from.
Same thing.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Tell me about the audience for Stitch Fix. Before we jump back, we'll go into social media a bit more. But who is it men, women, children, adults, like all ages, and what is their relationship with fashion typically?
Yeah, I think the business model is really interesting in the sense that we truly are a brand for all. There isn't like a specific segmentation that I would give you, because we do serve women's, men's, and kids, and like basically the whole family. And so the basket, whereas, normally you would either target women specifically or target men or target kids, now we're targeting them all. We're a place where the whole family can shop. It's a place where, whether you're, hyper into fashion and you want fashion brands, and you are used to shopping at a higher designer price point, you can still get that at Stitch Fix. But if you are, more interested in lower price brands, you're interested in, let's say, athleisure and not so what's trending on the runways or what's trending in the fashion world, we still serve you. So it is hyper personalized, and the relationship I think that we use most is that, we're all humans. We all have to get dressed. We all have to be wearing clothing. So it is an interesting model in the sense that we really speak to everyone on a personalized level.
Yep. And it's true that we all have to get dressed, but I'd say not as much as we used to. So
that's true.
How is people's relationship with fashion changing with COVID? Are you seeing a lot of new signups because people are going out less, or are people less fashion, thinking about fashion less than before, or more? But how is COVID affecting behavior in just the fashion world?
Yeah, I think we've seen spikes and ups and downs, kind of as we were realizing the impact that COVID had on us. At the beginning of spring, it was definitely, okay, loungewear, athleisure, I want to be comfortable. I don't know how long we're going to be at home for, but the time I am at home, I want to be comfy. And so that was, March, April. And then as we look at trends and just like user behavior or consumer behavior, heading into May and June, it's like, okay, kind of getting tired of my loungewear, of my elastic sweatpants. I actually want to get back into the swing of things. With warmer weather, summer trends were starting to come back up. But of course, it is a place where it's a waist up dressing. As you and I, we're able to see each other on this Webex right now. It's interesting that, for everyone working from home, for everyone that's, enjoying the summer off or spending time with kids or whatever, we're still, whether in a professional setting or a personal setting, we're still chatting with other humans in this waist up format where, you'll see the top, the accessories, whatnot, but not necessarily bottoms. And so it's interesting that it used to be lounge athleisure, summer trends starting to spike, and now it's definitely waist up. Yeah, I foresee us continuing to have sweatpants on and dress shirts on to hop onto our Zooms and our Webexes and whatnot.
Yep. You make a really interesting point about how I oversimplify the question, of how have things changed with COVID. It's like things are changing all the time, and we definitely going through different waves of how people are dealing with it. I recall a conversation I had with Kate Zahman from Pernod Ricard a few weeks ago at a Brand Innovators webcast, and she mentioned that at the very beginning of COVID, everyone stocked up on like cheap booze, like box wine and stuff, and that stuff just could not stay on the shelves. And then 2 months in, people started buying, that $300 bottle of wine they'd get out for dinner, they'd now be buying at home and realize they're going to be in for a while. So it's really interesting talking to folks from different industries and seeing that it's not just like how has COVID changed business. It's like people's behavior are changing in waves, and I imagine in fashion, or as you say, it seems like we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, 2 months from now, even if the country isn't fully open still. People like my girlfriend and I went out to dinner this weekend, and she wanted to wear a dress, and we did like outdoor seating at our favorite restaurant, and it was the first time she'd done that in 6 months, and it was really fun. So I can see how people are probably the way people are like can't wait to go travel. People can't wait to dress up and feel great about themselves again.
Yeah, we also did that. We went out to eat, did kind of outdoor seating. It was the first time I wore heels last week, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I've worn heels for the last, I want to say 15, almost 20 years, almost at least, if not every day, every week, without even thinking about it. And now that we've been at home and I've been, much more casual in and out while doing, kind of groceries or anything like that, hadn't really stopped to dwell on my heels, and then wore those out. And I'm at a place now where I'm like, wait, why have I been doing this for about 15 years? These are not comfortable. So it's definitely getting us to rethink social norms and things that we were just taking for granted before.
That's so funny. Now I got to ask, did you bring your heels to Newport?
I brought one pair of heels. It's our 1-year wedding anniversary, and so I figured, okay, I'll dress up one of the days, and the rest I'll probably be in flip-flops enjoying the sand.
Nice. Well, congrats on your anniversary. That's awesome, and glad you could get away. And thanks again for joining. So back to social media. One thing that we frequently reference at Spaceback is the statistic that 74% of people, and this is even before COVID, 74% of people report that they actively avoid ads, avoid ad experiences. Like they don't really, even if they see places on the screen, they expect to see ads, they'll scroll past them or their eyes will avert. And then it's 78% of people who say that they use social media to make purchase decisions, to research brands, to see what their friends are buying. So it's interesting. Social media is an environment where I think people seek out brand relationships and are very open to the kind of content that brands are creating. Meanwhile, ads are ads and are seen as being more intrusive and obviously not as good of a user experience. Tell me about the content strategy on social media and maybe which platforms you're invested in. Kind of rank order. Are you using Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then the type of content strategy because you have like all kinds of audiences you mentioned. So how do you create content that speaks to all your potential audiences?
Yeah, and so I think the approach that we take is first segmented, women's, men's, kids. And so we run those in 3 separate channels. And so if you were to look at our Instagram, you would have our main Stitch Fix channel. That would be women's. Stitch Fix Men's is men's focus, and then Stitch Fix Kids, for the little ones in the family. The way that we do approach it is from a line of business perspective. And so, we are, I would say, first and foremost on Instagram from an organic channel perspective. And so here we do break down from what's in feed to what goes in stories, what's IGTV, and now Reels, that all marketers are taking into account. So that's first and foremost. Back to your separation of, what's organic versus ads. I would say from any ad perspective, any marketer will tell you that the whole, Facebook kind of family is most important from that perspective. But again, from connecting and moving ads aside, connecting from, more so of a community stand base, we have Instagram. Then after that, I think Facebook and Twitter, TikTok is becoming more and more important, especially, with the uprise of adults and people a bit older than 15 downloading the app and using the app as of earlier this March, like all of us, right? all on TikTok now.
And it's awesome. I gotta say, TikTok is so entertaining.
Agreed. I think you could spend time and you're like, wait, I've been on this for how long now? Just going in and understanding the trends.
I feel like
so yeah,
I know new music now than more than I ever have before too.
exactly. Or when I hear music, I'm like, wait, I think I've seen this dance. What does it look
Yeah,
like?
that's a TikTok song.
Exactly. So yeah, so TikTok as well. YouTube is a player, especially for longer form video, when we're able to have longer form storytelling. I think back to your question about how we actually segment it, because we are speaking to everyone. You know, we do try to speak and to have, you know, larger trend buckets spoken there. And so let's say back to, you know, athleisure still being top of mind. If we go back to athleisure, we'll be able to showcase a selection that has, you know, from a $15 or sorry, like a $25 top all the way to $200 top. And so in our ads, or sorry, not only in our ads, those will be targeted and way more specified to the different target audiences that there are. But then on our organic channels, we'll be able to showcase that variety up front. And so if that interpels you or that speaks to you, you know that, you know, we're serving you as well. In terms of in social though, for the last, I want to say the last 5 or 6 months, we've actually been focusing on it in a different capacity. I think our content marketing strategy has shifted way more to showcasing our brand values, leading into, you know, all of the conversations that have been going on in the social landscape. I think it's been, or it is important now more than ever for brands to, you know, put a stake in the sand and share where their values are at. And so that's been an approach that we've taken that's been, you know, quite successful, just because those are things that are top of mind. You know, if you're looking at the civil unrest that started in June and continuing to go on, and that, you know, opening dialogue for really, really important conversations here in the U.S. I think, you know, brands that are playing it safe, or that are kind of being the, you know, the 2010 Taylor Swift of this world, that are, you know, Switzerland and not taking a stand, is not something that audience members can actually connect with. It's, hey, is this brand good for me? Yeah, they look like they have the great product, but what about their founders? What about their values? How do they, you know, what's their stake on this certain issue? Those are all things that are more and more important in the consumer landscape. And so for sure, although we take a line of business approach, I think our strategy towards sharing our brand values has also been really important, especially in the last 6 months, as the whole country has been, you know, going through changes and starting dialogues and continuing the dialogue on some really, really important issues.
Yep. No, that I'm really glad you brought that up, and actually that leads me to recall that we actually have some materials that we've uncovered from your prior work, where I think diversity is something that's been very important to the brands that you've worked at, and you personally. So we do have some a reel from some work you've done while you were with Sephora. Vishal, is that something we can queue up and share with the audience? Now that looks like a party I want to be at. Angelique, are you back?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that was so cool. Great work. Tell us a little bit about that production, because I believe that was before 2020, correct?
Yeah. This was before 2020. This was when so I was selected for back then running our social and influencer platforms, and this was actually the very first campaign that Sephora cast that was not cast by models. And so this was the first time that the business was moving away from having models being at the forefront of, in-store displays or TV or ads or anything like that. And we actually, the way that we drove this, we actually pivoted it to be in-store employees. And so everyone that you saw in that video were in-store makeup artists and cast members. And, the approach that we took was to, again, showcase the real people, showcase not only, as a consumer, someone you could see yourself in, but also showcase, the heart and soul of the company, which were the employees. This was really interesting. The campaign that we had right before this was actually shot by Inez and Banud. And so in the fashion industry, they're, some of the top of the line photographers, and, they've done everything from glossy to print to magazine covers. And that was the direction in which we had traditionally gone with Sephora, being part of the larger LVMH family. And so, working with the business and helping them understand that this pivot was actually quite crucial, knowing that smaller brands who were social first and who had faces of the brand that were relatable, like back in this day, this is when the Cahill cosmetics were just coming up. And so being able to help the company shift perspective and come to a place where, we were inclusive, we were diverse, and we were showcasing a slew of people that were not your typical model, but that could actually connect much more closely with our consumer audience. I think was a really great campaign to be on, and was also setting precedent for what Sephora now does. And so, yeah, it was, I think, one of those career pivoting campaigns where not only, was this part of a larger holiday ad where, it was on TV, it was on social, it was across, it was like a 360 campaign that we had run. But it also led into us having like personalized IG stories and IG lives with each specific beauty ambassador and beauty member that was part of this campaign, and they were able to tell their stories. They were able to, we were able to create long form video that was like, this person is selecting this for this reason, follow their favorites. And so now all of a sudden we had created a bit of a spokesperson model with own employees and ambassadors, which is really great. And then we're just getting a slew of great comments like, finally plus size in beauty, or finally men wearing makeup, finally, cis conforming genders representing the beauty industry, which had been typically, female led. So it was a shift from where it was. It was very risky. Not to say that, people were not like, okay, what are you doing? Are you sure this is the right thing? But finally, when it went live in market, I think this opened the door to where the company is now, in terms of having, faces of the company that are much more relatable versus your glossy high fashion models that came off the runway.
Yeah, and seeing the end product, I think you pulled it off extremely well, and it just looked like a lot of fun too. I would love to learn more about. So I'm being told to go to questions from the audience. I have one more question from me first. But we've seen some examples of content that you've created. When you were talking about social, you mentioned that like YouTube kind of better for longer form content. But are you creating content specifically for different platforms like you're on? Like you're creating TikTok specifically for TikTok and Instagram for Instagram, Facebook for Facebook, or when you create content, are you posting the same content to all of your channels?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Back to us talking about how, COVID has changed the landscape. As a marketer, I've always thought it's been very important to create content specific to the channels we're going to be posting on. Anyone who's worked in the social media space or the influencer space knows that, we come from scrappier budgets, and we've just learned to be scrappy and work with that grit over the years of, okay, sure, you've shot this for video, let me re-edit it and cut it down for social. But that's come a long way, and I do think that it's important to create specific for the social channels. If you're going to repurpose your ad that's been shot for out of home, and you're going to put it on TikTok, it won't perform. What's native and what resonates with those audiences is, camera first, show me first, whether that's like your dance or your story or whatnot. It is much more personal. Also, just in that vein, whether, it's on Snapchat, if you're still there, or stories or reels or whatever it may be, there's a different reason why people connect to each of them. And if that content doesn't feel authentic to that channel or doesn't feel authentic to the reasoning why your audience is there, I think you're just going to lose them. So yeah, I think the approach is creating content specific to each, and it's okay that that content only lives in one place. It doesn't have to always be repurposed for everything else. Of course, there are events and scenarios like a 360 where it's, okay, let me include the small snippet, but then make something else, or let me use that messaging and let me refilm. So I think there are ways now, especially with quick turn content creation, that allow for that, much more nimble approach to creative. Not everything has to be perfected and photoshopped and glossy. You could film it on your phone and put it up to stories within that 24-hour period. And I think in most cases, that type of content will outperform versus something that's been like copy and pasted for a channel that's not suited for it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. And I'd even argue that the bit has flipped where most brands now, or at least most brands who are, staying up on digital, are social first. And we see that more often than not, it's social content that's being repurposed for display ads. And I'd say 5 years ago, it was the other way around, where it was, brands basically posting their ads to their social media channel. And I think someone realized, like, no one likes and follows ads. People like and follow content. So brands got really good at creating content for these social channels that feels a lot more like content that like people can like and follow and have on their feed, and not feel like they're just seeing ads from the brand all the time. So I think Stitch Fix has done that really well. And we've looked at your Instagram and Facebook feeds, and they are unique. And it definitely looks like it's a more personal connection rather than really selling anything. It's more about brand identity and showcasing happy customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to go to a question from the audience, and we just have a few more minutes. So sorry, I took most of the time here. But here's a question: is when it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purpose, and how does that impact your approach to marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think brand purpose, is always at the heart of what's being created, as long as you know your mission and how your audiences relate with you. I think that should morph and tailor the content itself. If you, again, back to what we're talking about brand values, for the most part, companies will have that as part of their mission. And I think every piece of content should at least, ring true to those values that you've put out, and then also ring true to the mission that you've started out with. So, for example, if your mission is, I want to be the greenest and cleanest beauty brand out there, and I wanted to serve everyone, women and men. If that's your mission and that's your brand values and that's your goal, the content that you will put out will A, be inclusive of men and women. B, will also, speak to, from an educational front, the clean properties, the fact that you're not using, toxic ingredients in your brand. You'll also continuously, drive educating content on where industry norms are at, where you as a brand fit in. You could, of course, create entertaining content that's not always educating, but continue to be in that vein. If you do a makeup tutorial, or, bring us through how the product is made and that satisfying content of like in the factory. You would keep your brand values for all. Okay, we're clean and green and sustainable. Let's showcase that to our consumer, but then we also deserve men and women. And so I think that would come out regardless of which angle or what type of content you were putting out. It would be educating and entertaining at the same time, but with those at the heart of it.
Yep, right on. Cool. And another question from the audience. What is top of mind as you prepare for the back half of 2020? And I guess we're kind of into the back half of 2020 already. So let's say the back half of 2020.
The back half. What's top of mind, I think, is just continuing to understand newer channels that are presented to us. Especially in the social media landscape, it's important to understand kind of all of the trends that are going on and that are happening. Yes, some trends, peak and die within that 24-hour cycle, or if you're looking at like hashtag challenges on TikTok, it'll probably be like 1 week lifespan. But it's important to know, okay, what's Triller all about? That's been popping up in our newsfeed. Let me go and understand it in case that impacts my other channels. Okay, these few changes have happened, like recently Facebook just launched Shop. And now, like Instagram, your checkout is much more quicker, and those were updates made in the app, just last week. So being able to understand that and how that might shift your strategy from a weekly basis is really important. So in terms of back half, not only is it understanding the trends and continuing to keep a close eye on it, but then also understanding from a consumer standpoint, we're tired. It's been a long and heavy year. And so as a brand, how do we plan that? Like, you're tired of being pushed product down your throat. You're tired of, or I guess I am, of being targeted for X, Y, and Z. At some point, I want it to be entertaining. I want to connect with the brand because I believe in them. And, I think that they deserve a clientele like me. And so for any brand, I think it's continuing to morph into what does business look like going forward? How has COVID not only, yes, we're living in it, but how does it change consumer behaviors for not only back half of this year, but then also going forward? And how will that impact, the way that we shop?
Right on. Thank you.
I feel like I could listen to you both speak forever, but I'm popping back in also because I have a question. Angelique, I love the campaign that you shared. I did something similar back in my Bobble Bar days, turning the SWAT stylists into a team of mini influencers, which had such an impact on, conversion. It enabled building relationships with customers in a much different way. So it was incredible to see it at a large scale. And the campaign that you showed, it was just so joyful. Like, it was, I know Casey was like, that's a party I want to be at. It just looked like it was so much fun. So that was really incredible to see. I have to say that your social is fantastic. I know you're talking a lot about influencer marketing, and the way that you've used influencers is very impactful. And there's also a consistency to the photos where they are really, really well done, but still within the style of the influencer, but they all just look amazing in your feed. I would love for you to share some tips that all of our viewers, especially ones who are working for brands, building up their own social profiles, whether it's personal or on behalf of the brand, what they can, any tidbits you can share so that they can do the same thing. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's a really great question and segue into how to leverage influencer marketing. For audience members kind of tuning in and wanting to understand how you can take a brand brief, build it for your own channels, but then also have it reused on the brand side, I would say that always first and foremost, stay true to you, stay true to your channels and the brand values that you've put out. If you're an influencer, only partner with brands that you actually connect with and that, your audience would have affinity for. And so once that's posted on your feed, of course, there's more opening from the brand to repost and to regram on its channels because of the fact that, it's been true to you, but then also true to them. if there are brand briefs, for example, that are sent out from a creator perspective, yes, A, always stay true to you and your channel, but B, lean in to what the brief has and what's created. If it's part of a larger 360, and that there's more than one participant that's playing or that's part of it, lean into that, ask questions, ask clarifying factors. I would say stay clear of any brand collaborations that are one and done type of deals where it's like, hey, like very transactional influencer relationships where it's just like, here's a pile of money, post this, I don't really care if you use it. There are brands that we can think of that still have that approach. And I would say that, your audience can sniff that out and figure out that, wait, this feels really disjointed. This person's talking about, body positivity, yet they're promoting skinny tea. Like there's a disconnect and you'd eventually lose that following. So from a creator perspective, stay true to you and then also follow that brief because brands, there's nothing more that they love than being able to reshare that content on their feeds. And so I think part of that is creating that longer term relationship, that two-way relationship that leaves room to have two-way dialogue, to ask clarifying questions and things like that.
And on the brand side, what's your trick to curating those photos so that even though they're all coming from different places, some of them may not have even involved a brand brief, I'm guessing based on some of the influencers you're using or regular people, but how do you make sure that they all look so cohesive on your feed?
Yeah, I think part of it is it's all shot like influencer shot, and so it's not like in studio. So having a feed that is real and that feels authentic, where this has been shot from home, whether on iPhone or on camera, is some consistency that we like to have on social, not just for our influencer content, but also all of our social content. It does have to feel platform first. Back to the conversation Casey and I were having earlier, tailoring it specific to that channel is what helps it be successful. So that's kind of an approach that we've taken that feels native to the platform it's showing up on. But then back to being able to curate and what that looks like, I think for us it's easy in the sense that there isn't one specific target market we're speaking to. We really speak to all. And so having that authenticity come through and making sure that, yeah, there are sometimes some brand briefs, but having it be authentic to them, I think that's why there's consistency on our channel, because it's authentic to multiple people. And so that curation now comes through as being, real UGC or real influencer content versus, highly edited or highly, posed content.
Well, I think you're doing a fantastic job. And the reason I was asking questions, I know coming from the brand side, it's a topic that we're all discussing on a regular basis of, how to curate that influencer content and make the most of it. So thank you for sharing those tips. I'm sure everyone learned a lot from that. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And sorry again that there was connection issues at the beginning.
Totally fine. So a big thank you, Casey, as well, for hosting that really interesting panel for us. And a reminder to our viewers that we still have 2 great sessions to tune into. So make sure to share today's link with friends and colleagues. And moving on to our next fireside chat, we're thrilled to be joined by Rachel Dillon, the Executive Director of Global Communications and Influencer Relations at Aveda. Rachel is a communications professional with more than 10 years of global experience working in both the beauty and food and beverage industries. And she's currently the executive director of Aveda, where she oversees communication strategy, brand partnerships, and influencer management for the iconic beauty and hair care company. So welcome to the stage, Rachel. And also our moderator, Karen Spencer, who's the SVP of Partnerships at Whaler.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi.
Nina, thanks so much for that introduction. And Rachel, thanks for spending time with us today. I wonder if we could start with just some pieces of your personal story. I know that you have been from New York to Hong Kong to Minneapolis. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Nice to see you again, Karen. It's good to be here today. And thanks to the Brand Innovators team for having us. This is super fun, and it's always good to connect with everyone in this crazy time of isolation. So yeah, a little bit about me. I started my career in New York, and I worked at Marina Mar Communications, which is a communications agency, which has since expanded to do a lot more on the influencer side. And while I was there, I was really focused on traditional media. And that was my passion. Like growing up, I love magazines. I was always like diving into a new issue whenever it arrived. So for me, getting to work in a traditional media landscape, working with editors, pitching stories. I worked mostly on Procter & Gamble brands on the beauty side, so CoverGirl, Venus, Secret, etc. So I was doing a lot of editor meetings, and I remember at one point things were starting to shift where our team was splitting in half, and we were traditional media, and then we were one half influencer. So it was interesting because, and actually when Karen, you and I were speaking the other day, I was thinking back to that time, and it was like we were still calling them bloggers. And it wasn't that long ago, but it seems like, wow, the landscape has changed so much so fast. So while I was at Marina Mar, I remember it was sort of like, okay, we need to start inviting bloggers to events. And then it was, oh, you can't call them bloggers anymore. Like they are influencers, and they were becoming more and more influential. And I remember a lot of these people, their platforms just started blowing up. And that was when Instagram was really becoming a thing and things were changing fast. So then when I moved to Hong Kong, things were maybe on the agency side, because I joined a small communications agency there. So on the agency side, things were a little bit behind where they were when I was working in New York. So I came in and I said, well, why aren't we working with influencers? We have to include influencers in any of our campaigns. So that was really interesting, because then we started making sure that our outreach included, sending mailings to influencers, bringing them to dinners. Like that became a bigger part of our strategy. And then when I went on to work at Deliveroo, a global food delivery startup that's based in the UK, it was sort of interesting because there we started off with a strong focus on more traditional media because, well, I would say two reasons. One, because we were new to the market, we wanted to make sure that we were getting really positive coverage all the time. And there was definitely a side of our PR strategy where we wanted to make sure that we were well received by the local government, and getting that established in the local media was really important. But also to my larger team, influencer strategy wasn't really important. So we weren't prioritizing that. So over time, it was becoming more and more important at our work at Deliveroo. So I was there at Deliveroo for almost 2 years, and then I relocated with Aveda to Minneapolis, where I am right now, where I oversee global comms and influencer relations. And I would say now in my role, influencer is so important in the beauty landscape, and that's what we can talk about a lot more today.
Yeah, shout out to my former family in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Back from my Target days, I have a lot of heart for that city and area. And as you said, we saw the transition from working with what we call bloggers to influencers. And now at Whaler, we say creators quite a bit because we've heard from them that many of them want to be classified by what they make instead of the effect that they have on others. There's also been a number of transitions in terms of where influencer work sits in a brand's org structure. We have clients who work on the marketing team, on PR and comms, on the social media teams. It really feels like, depending on the company, influencer sits in a different section. And so I'm wondering what the benefits and the challenges are to being both the executive director of global communications, but also the executive director of influencer relations for Aveda.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there are a lot of ways to answer it. I think one of the main benefits is that, so I'm part of the bigger consumer marketing team. So the other half of my team oversees all of our social channels. So what's great is that we're able to work so closely together to make sure that we can repurpose the content as much as possible. And I would say, during COVID, when there was such a shortage of content, when we started turning more to our work with influencers, and that's, I would say, more traditional creators in that sense, and people who work across the beauty landscape, and then also our Aveda artists, who, even though they might not have as big of a following as the more traditional creators, they have a really important part in our network, and they also know our brand just as well as we do, and as well as anyone, because they are the stylists using the products every single day. So I would say that is a major advantage, is sitting in this role and being able to work with all of the influencers on both sides. We can make sure that we're repurposing the content closely. But I would say one of the challenges is that there's so much to do. So, overseeing communications, that's like, in the very traditional sense, we're doing all the press releases, the press materials, the Q&As, we're dealing with crisis comms. And then it's like, on the other side, we're also, managing the fun partnerships with influencer. But working at a big company, and we're part of the Estee Lauder companies, there's also just a lot of work when it comes to pulling together agreements and legal documents and making sure that everything is reviewed by our legal team before it goes live. So that creates some extra layers. And I would say that's maybe one of our bigger challenges too, is that we have extra eyes on everything. So everything takes a little bit longer.
I think that your mention and your work with Aveda artists is really relevant for a lot of companies right now who are interested in leveraging a group of, maybe we'll call them micro influencers, whether that's a group of company employees or affiliate communities. We saw that the eMarketer report that came out last week said that 40% of the followers of influencers want more how-to content. They're looking for videos, I think, especially while people are home, on how to do new things and what new ideas are for hair. I just learned about hair plopping as a trend. So could you talk a little bit more about that partnership that you have with your Aveda artists and how they can be a source of great content and inspiration for your customers?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what's really interesting is that, well, there are two parts of this, I guess. So for Aveda, we are very particular with the people that we will work with because we have a very specific brand mission. We were built on a mission to care for the environment, and we have always been a cruelty-free brand. And it's not always easy for other people to understand that right away. If we're working with new creators, they don't fully understand the history of our brand. And we are a 40-year-old company. So there are just a lot of nuances. So working with our artists makes things super easy because they went to an Aveda Institute. They spent years understanding the brand. They have a lot of love and heart for the brand. I mean, they are like the heart and soul of Aveda. And they're the people that are also out and interacting with our guests on a day-to-day basis. So they really understand the brand and the products. And then I would say, like, on the flip side, over the last few months, we were also seeing this demand for how-to content. We were seeing a higher interest in wellness content. So in our response to that, we had to completely pivot on all of our social communications. We redid all of our content. We really started to focus on wellness, and we tapped into our artists for that. And on Instagram and on Pinterest specifically, we saw a huge spike in engagement, which was amazing. And that's really to the credit of our artists who helped us to create that content. So the way that we work with them, there are several different things that we do. So we have, 2 years ago, we decided to create a professional channel. So we now have Aveda and we have Aveda artists. So we post a lot of the more inspiring, creative, really fun hair, like wild hair, pink hair, blue hair, high fashion hair. That's mostly on the Aveda Artists channel now. So that's where artists come to get inspired, to share their work. They're tagging us all the time. And that's the main channel that we use to communicate with them. So when the pandemic started and all of the salons were closed, we wanted to make sure that we could help keep our artists and our, also, you can call them our micro influencers, really, because that's what they are, And I should also note that our artists are not employees of the brand. They all work, they're independently employed by independently owned partner salons across the US and around the world. We have about 9,000 salons around the world. So during the pandemic, we really wanted to make sure that they were able to stay engaged with the brand, and that they, you know, while they were home, because artists are so used to working hands-on with their clients and spending time with people, we didn't want them to feel like isolated or cut off from the brand. So we, on our education side, we created like 1,000 hours of free education for programming. So we used our Veda Artist channel to drive back to the education program. And then at the same time, through our Veda Artist channel, we were putting out a number of different challenges and asking them to create different forms of content, mostly in the form of how-to videos for the brand, tagging the brand, which we would then reshare both on Aveda Artist and on the Aveda channel. So we're continuing to do that, even though the salons are back open. So we've definitely seen it slow down since salons are reopening, our artists are back to work. But over that period of time, we saw our number of followers on the Aveda Artist account went up by 150%, completely organically. We don't have any budget to put behind it. So I think that it speaks to, you know, when you're really able to connect with your audience, it pays off. I mean, we saw insane engagement through that period, which, you know, we're lucky. I mean, it really, really helped us.
Yeah, and when I was taking a look at the Aveda Artists Instagram, it was giving me a lot of inspiration. And I was thinking it's interesting that it was sort of created as like a front of house, back of house strategy, because we're seeing such an increased interest these days in the behind the scenes, and everybody kind of wants to know, how did the perfection get created? So I love that now you've got both for people to look at. And certainly hearing about your pivots this year, I mean, 2020 is, I think, definitely for marketers going to go down in history as the year of the most possible pivots ever executed. But something that I love to hear is not just a trend for you all, but really is a commitment dating back to the founding of your company, is Aveda's alignment with their commitment to the environment and making sure that everything is sustainable as possible. And listening to you talk about it and hearing you say that it's even had an effect on your own personal beliefs and behavior. Can you share the company's mission with us and talk a little bit about how that comes through in your own work?
Yeah, I would be more than happy to. So I'll just recite the mission because I don't know how else to say it, but our mission at Aveda is to care for the world we live in, from the products we make to the ways in which we give back to society. At Aveda, we strive to set an example for environmental leadership and responsibility, not just in the world of beauty, but around the world. So I was telling Karen the other day that we recite this mission before every single meeting. And at first, when I joined the company, because I'd never worked for such a big company before, I came from a startup and then from smaller agencies, and I was overwhelmed by it. And now that I've been with the company for 2.5 years, I really understand the importance of it, because it's a really good reminder as to who we are. Every single thing we do is guided by this environmental mission. And even though the company was bought by Estee Lauder in 1996, even though the founder has since, he had left the company and he has since passed away, and we've gone through a couple of leadership changes, the company is still so focused on this environmental mission that I see some of my colleagues have worked at the company for 20 or 30 years, which is amazing. And we're still making strides in the environmental space. So we launched a solar array at our headquarters just a few months ago. And we have several other sustainability initiatives that are really important to us. And I think, you know, and I think I can speak on behalf of some of my colleagues, it's the reason why a lot of us work there. And for me, now, as a new mom, I think a lot about, okay, what is my impact on the world around me? And coming from a food delivery startup where every Friday we would have Friday lunch. And it was so much fun because we'd order from like dozens of restaurants nearby. We have all this food coming in. We try all these different things. But then the end, you have all these plastic containers that aren't even getting recycled. And, I think about that a lot, but there was nothing I could really do about it, or at least I didn't think there was something I could do about it. So now that I've joined Aveda, this is a company where we spend hours talking about how much water would it take to make this t-shirt for our special Earth Month promotion. Then this is a company that truly, truly cares, and it's really reflected in everything we do, including how we work with our partners. So, partners, whether that's a traditional creator or a partner like a big brand partner. For example, we've been working a lot lately with the brand 3.1 Philip Lim, and Philip Lim himself is very, very outspoken on the topic of sustainability. And that's sort of how we found each other, because we're always looking. Aveda does a lot with Fashion Week, because we have our artists working backstage to do hair and makeup. So we're always looking for fashion brands that are working in the sustainability space. And years ago, there were only these very small brands that were doing sustainable fashion. Now it's becoming more mainstream. So, having a partner like Philip Lim, who's really able to speak to sustainability and is really outspoken about it, and acknowledges the fact that it's a journey, and that even they're not perfect, but they are taking into consideration to become better at what they do in terms of sustainability. That makes them such a good partner for us. And so that's what we are always looking for, is who else can we partner with that is just as interested in the sustainability as we are, because that's the message that we want to get across to consumers.
And in the previous session, they were talking about how important authenticity is in marketing, and marketing really effectively. And of course, it feels to me like authenticity is kind of the word of the moment right now. But I think it's really important to note that it's not just a marketing tactic, and it's not meant for something to now everyone say, like, how can we come across as authentic? Like, actually, we're saying that partnerships and messaging need to be authentic, because audiences are so savvy these days that they can sniff out fakery pretty quickly. And so I love to hear that your partnerships on the corporate level are focused on making sure that those company values are aligned, but you're also digging deep with your influencer partnerships as well, right? To make sure that they're also committed to the environment, and that it's not just sort of a first time thing when they partner with you.
Yeah, we have a pretty lengthy checklist of things that we look for in our influencer partnerships. So, one of the top things would be interest in sustainability. And we don't need to work with someone that has the most sustainable lifestyle, because it's not realistic. But we are looking for people who care and are making steps to be better, and maybe are becoming more outspoken in the space. One interesting partnership that we did just last February, though it feels like forever ago, it was during the last Fashion Week, and we partnered with Lauren Singer. She's the founder of Package Free Shop, and her Instagram is Trash is for Tossers. She's fantastic, and she's so outspoken in the sustainability space, and she's really made a name for herself, I would say, in pop culture, because she's famous for keeping all of her trash for 5 years in a mason jar. It's amazing. So we partnered with Lauren. We had worked with Gabriella Hirst, which is a sustainable fashion brand, for their runway show in February, and we brought Lauren. And what's interesting is, like, when it comes down to it, Lauren as an individual is much more sustainable than our brand. But we know her followers are so interested in sustainability, which is why we wanted to partner with her for the show, which had total, like, they were using recycled materials, they were using recycled plastic for their runway. So it was a big sustainability angle. And that partnership with Lauren on her own channel outperformed all of her other posts from the last year. So it's really interesting to see how these things are now playing out. And as we're finding more creators that are interested in sustainability and in the space, and they're becoming more and more relevant in the mainstream media and pop culture. That's really playing out very well for Aveda, because we've sort of been doing this thing all along, but it wasn't always cool, right? Like, it wasn't always cool to recycle. It was like crunchy granola, like Birkenstocks, like, you kind of have this like mental image of someone who's living this very, very sustainable life, but it's not like that anymore. You can have both. You can have this balance of sustainability and fashion, and you don't have to be one way or the other anymore.
So let's talk about actual trends. We know that you guys have been committed to sustainability from the beginning, but how proactive are you in spotting sort of a current conversation around hair and beauty and then building a strategy based on that conversation, either from an influencer angle or a PR angle?
Yeah, good question. So I would say, because we have our community management team always looking at, where we're being tagged, and because we have this huge network we have 50,000 Aveda artists that are always tagging us, we see things happening pretty fast. We're not on TikTok currently, and I know that that's where a lot of these trends are coming through. So maybe it's time for us to get on TikTok. But oftentimes we're finding that our artists will post on TikTok and they'll also post on Instagram. So we always kind of see what they're up to and what they're doing, and we're wanting to reshare that all the time. And then one of the things that Aveda does is when we see there's maybe an emerging trend, or we can kind of predict what the trend is going to be just based on, maybe it's something that we spotted at Fashion Week, maybe it's something that we're seeing is starting to get covered in the media. What we can do is we will reach out to our artists and we'll pull content from our artists and turn that into a media pitch and say, we've spotted lowlights as a trend for the fall, and here are some images from our top artists that work with celebrities in LA or New York, and you have rights to use their images. Here's a how-to on how you should get the look if you want to go to your stylist. So we're able to play it both ways, which has been really useful for us.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to shift to take some questions from the audience. Have you moved beyond holiday planning? Hi, buddy. Have you moved beyond holiday planning? Are you already looking towards 2021, or what stage are you in brand planning right now?
Good question. Because we're constantly having to change and pivot, right? I think we were so optimistic, thinking, oh, things will go back to normal. Things will go back to normal. And we have a big franchise launching next month. And, back a few months ago, we thought, well, things will be back to normal by then. So we've had to just keep pivoting and changing our strategy. So for holiday, I guess, in terms of like partnering with influencers and on the comm side, we're pretty much through that. And I think we've accepted the fact that there won't be anything in person. We're just getting through like our digital strategy. And now we're starting to plan for next year. And that's where things are getting a little bit tricky, because we're still in that position. We keep thinking, so for example, Earth Month is of course really important for Aveda. And we keep talking about, maybe we will have a panel discussion, maybe we'll have an in-person event. So what we're starting to have to do is just think like, okay, the panel will be either virtual or hopefully it will be in person. So we're sort of having to have backup options for everything, because we don't know where the world is going to be. And I think that's maybe the biggest challenge, is there's like the best case scenario, and then maybe there's a backup option for that. So we're working through it just like everyone else is.
Yeah, it's wild. I was thinking about things like South by Southwest that we didn't go to this year, that we thought surely we'd be back next year. And now I'm starting to wonder, like, are conferences and meetups actually going to happen next spring? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Another question about your media plan and media budget. Feeling like a lot of brands have had to drastically pivot those plans. Anything you can share about how your media plan has adjusted?
That's a good question. So I work on the global team, and then our media budgets are managed by the region. So like our North America team manages their own media budget. I can't really speak to it specifically because it's not my area of expertise, and it's a totally separate team. But I would say, yes, I'm sure they've had to pivot. They've had to make some changes and decide where to reallocate funds. But yeah, I can't share too much on it because it's their team.
Yeah, sure. I did read the IBM US Retail Index over the weekend and learned that they're saying consumer behavior as it's related to online spending has been increased this year in what they thought would happen over the next 5 years. So that we've just really hit the gas in terms of where customers should have been 5 years from now in terms of e-commerce and online sales. And it feels like that's relevant to influencer work as well. Do you think that as you continue to review the results from influencer marketing and social media pushes, that those budgets and focuses will increase for Aveda?
I think so. And one thing I should have mentioned earlier is, so we have a really interesting program called Solane Commerce that's launched in North America about 2 years ago. And that is a white label interface that our salons can use. So say Spoken Wheel Salon in LA or San Francisco, they can build this platform into their own website and people can shop Aveda products, but then we handle all of the back end fulfillment. And what we're looking into now is how can we partner with our influencers to help promote that. So during quarantine, when the salons were shut down, we saw some influencers were promoting for their salons. They were doing like product tutorials and talking about, new products or their favorite products. And one influencer, for example, helped her salon generate $50,000 in just commission in a month, which is insane. So I think when that happened, everyone was like, whoa, okay, this has so much potential. So now I think we're looking to see how can we grow that? How can we make sure we're putting enough investment in that? And making sure that we are helping our artists understand like social selling and how to best use those tools, because it benefits them and it benefits their salons.
Yeah, definitely. Love to see those new kind of ideas around revenue streams popping up this year. Another question from the audience: where does Pinterest fit into your list of social activity in terms of priorities? And if you're working there, how do you measure success?
Good question. So I would say, and again, I don't handle our socials, so I'm speaking on behalf of the rest of our team, but it would be Instagram first, then Facebook, then Pinterest. And typically we're resharing most of our content from Instagram, but what worked really well was we had all this wellness content and that was performing so well on Instagram. So we measure success on Pinterest by engagement and number of reposts. And I think what we saw during quarantine and during the beginning of COVID was just the amount of repins. Actually, Pinterest reached out to us and said, we're seeing a huge increase in engagement with what you guys are doing. This is amazing. And then they actually pitched a story to Glossy about it because it was going so well. So we were really happy with that.
And I'm just right here waiting whenever you're ready to build that TikTok strategy.
Yeah, let's do it.
So in terms of inclusiveness, have you seen the industry evolving around what your audience demographic target was before and what it is now as we sort of push into becoming more inclusive in the beauty industries?
Yeah, I think, sorry about my dog.
No problem.
Yes, 100%. I think that the focus has definitely changed. And like for Aveda, for example, we took a look at like our product offering, and for hair, we offer products for every hair type and texture. And, we're testing on every hair type and texture, but where we were falling short is makeup. So now we're going back and we're reevaluating all of our makeup shades because we want to make sure that we have products for every skin tone. So I would say, when it comes to like our content strategy, maybe we've changed slightly, but I would say it's more in the sense of, we now are committing to work with Black-owned brands, Black-owned vendors. So I think that's becoming more and more important to us. Not that it wasn't important before, but it's becoming a more key part of our strategy. because we want to make sure that we are much more conscious of that.
And I imagine that your sort of gender marketing has evolved over the last few years as well, no?
Yeah, we do have a men's line, and we speak primarily to women just based on the number of products that we have. But I would say yes, we are pretty inclusive when it comes to gender.
Okay, another one about communicating your brand purpose. So when you think about what your brand purpose is and how you fold that into your communications plans, can you share that approach?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to how specific we are with our mission, and it really comes through in everything that we do. So with all of our partnerships, our brand purpose is to care for the world we live in, and that means the people in the world and the environment. So over the last few months, it was how do we give back to hospitals? How do we give back to our community? We're in Minneapolis, which is where the George Floyd murder happened. So as soon as that happened, it was how do we react? How do we help? How do we respond? We pride ourselves on being a caring company. And I always give the example of, I have a colleague who spends her time on the weekends driving up north several hours to free turtles. And those are the types of amazing people that I work with that really, really care about, people in their communities and animals in the community. So I would say we are a brand with a very, very strong, specific purpose, and that really has to come through in everything that we do. So it's finding that balance of sharing, the products are amazing and the products are high performance and they work, but it's that balance of also sharing, they were manufactured using wind and solar power. So we always have to make sure that we are communicating both in our messaging.
And you mentioned to me how important customer feedback is, right? That you're constantly monitoring customers and what they have to say about your products, and that you have some brand loyalists who have been using Aveda their entire lives. And whenever you make a shift, there's a lot of customer feedback, and your company takes that super seriously and metabolizes it and folds it into your comms plan. Yeah? Yeah,
we do. I would say being a 40-year-old company and having people that have loved the products and used the products, and we hear people all the time say, oh, I love Aveda, I've always used Aveda, I grew up with my mom using Aveda, or I've used it my whole life, and that's amazing. But that means the people are passionate about the product. So it's like anything, if you see a change in branding, I mean, think about when any brand you love changes their logo. It's like, you hate it so much at first, you're so mad, and then you kind of grow to like it. It's the same thing for us. If we make any sort of change, sometimes it's not well received right away. So I gave the example of, we shifted from using glass bottles to recycled plastic because glass could become a problem in a salon, or if it's dropped, it's going to create a huge mess and someone could get hurt. Same thing in the shower. If you drop a glass shampoo bottle in your shower, it could be really terrible. And we shifted to recycled plastic, which actually is better because it's lighter weight. So for shipping, it's less emissions. So we definitely took a lot of time to make this decision, to analyze this decision. Is it better for the environment? Is it worse? And immediately our customers were upset because they thought, well, it's now plastic. But that was without understanding that, it is lighter weight, so it's better for shipping. It's made from recycled materials. We're not using virgin plastic. So it can be challenging for us, but we take time, and I know not every brand can do this, but we are very careful to always reply to everyone. If we get questions, if we get feedback, then we have a customer service team that is always on, and they're always engaging with our guests. So I think for us as a caring company, that's something that is really important to us, is having that connection.
Thank you both. so much for that. That was really incredible. And I love, as both someone with background in marketing and CX, I love that you ended with how important it is to have that connection with the customer and get that feedback, but also have a frontlines team that's really great at responding and building that relationship. So thank you so much for joining us today, Rachel. And thank you, Karen, as well, for moderating. That was really interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel and Nina. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Nina.
And for our last session of the day, we are joined by Kelly Cahill. With more than 15 years of robust marketing and brand development experience, Kelly currently serves as the Global Brand Marketing Director at Keds, where she oversees all major brand campaigns. Kelly graduated from the University of Oregon with a degree in sports marketing. And prior to joining the Keds team in April of 2019, Kelly held positions at both Nike and Adidas. In this session will be moderated by Jessica Thorpe, the president of Gen Video. And I believe that Jessica is about to join, just waiting for her video to start. And I will pass it off to Jessica and Kelly to get us started.
All right, thanks Nina and Kelly. Thanks for taking time to chat with me today. I'm very excited to learn more about what you're up to at Keds and how the brand is evolving as things are shifting. And so quickly before we jump into that, Jessica Thorpe, I'm one of the co-founders of Gen Video. We're an influencer company that focuses on bringing together social and commerce. And so we work with brands to help them think about how influencers can not only build brand equity, drive awareness, but bring consumers down funnel and help increase sales. And so, you know, I caught the tail end of the last conversation. There were some positive examples around how influencers were driving sales and building momentum for the brands. And so as we think about your brand, Kelly, the Keds brand, really want to start with understanding a little bit more about your role and how you are embracing the dynamic that exists today given COVID. I know there's a lot that we want to try to cover in terms of some of the activities that the brand's been taking, some of the evolution that the brand itself has had. But maybe we could start by a quick introduction and focus on what you cover for Keds, and we can jump into a few different topics.
Yeah, you bet. I've been with Keds a year and a half now. I actually made the move from Oregon, so the West Coast to the East Coast about a year and a half ago. I had primarily worked for major sport brands that are housed in Oregon between Nike and Adidas, all in marketing, all with a digital and a brand perspective to it, and then moved out here to really join a female-led brand, right? Like had been at all these sports brands beforehand and now came to Keds, which is a brand, you know, for women, and we are made up of mainly women. We have a few good men, don't get me wrong, as we all should, that are, you know, part of the family, but it's really about creating the product that we all will live and thrive in. And I think that was a big piece of me joining the Keds family and the work that we're trying to do. So at Keds, I head up our global marketing for the brand, which can be, it's all international marketing, everything from digital. We don't have any retail owned stores in the United States, but we have hundreds globally. So it's also an interesting time because of COVID and retail and handling that internationally without having to handle it in the US. So there's a little of a challenge there, not having owned retail to understand the current market, but it's also been great to have partners there. So we really everything you can think of under the sun for marketing is what my team does, from digital to retail. And I know we'll get into this in a bit, but also, you know, the branding exercises and the shifts given the current times we're living in.
Okay, well, so one of the things that you said when we chatted prior to this was that the brand has always been rebellious in the sense where, you know, back in the 50s, 60s, it wasn't appropriate for women to wear sneakers, right? It was like dress professionally, high heels, and so that there's this inherent equity around rebellion that the brand stands for. You spoke a lot about being made for women. As you were coming into the beginning of this year, you had spoke that the brand was going through a bit of a transformation. And so can you talk a little bit about what you were doing in 2019, how that was shifting as you were entering into the beginning of this year, and what you were able to capitalize on or maybe had to pivot around as we were entering COVID, probably right at the beginning of when some of these activities were about to occur?
Yes, absolutely. So Keds has been around, has been making sneakers for women and men actually for over 100 years, since 1916. And it really started with the need for women who were actually doing sport-like activities, believe it or not. And so there was a great need for this product for those women who were doing things that were traditionally unladylike, so to speak. So that's sort of the birth and the DNA of the brand. And as we were going into this year, there had been Keds has been a company that's been owned by several different parent companies, throughout its legacy. And as we were looking at the brand, what we had been before was sort of this ladies first concept, and it was pretty soft and very feminine and it didn't feel as inclusive as it could have been. It felt a little more exclusive given the creative work and some of that. So we thought, well, wait, what's actually in our DNA? Like, what are we known for? Like, how far back? Let's go in the archives and figure out what we really should be, and spend 18 months doing consumer research as all good brands should. What is she telling us? Like, what is Keds to her? And a lot of it was, oh, well, I remember that when I was a kid, and it's I love Keds, but I don't wear Keds. And so what does that mean? And with that came, out of the consumer research came a rebranding project of, that is our niche in the marketplace, is we are made for women, and we should be with you along your journey from childhood through being a grandmother, right? So what does that look like, and who is she? So we started down that path with a all women creative agency out of New York that really helped us along around made for women. And it's really whatever that means, like whatever that means to you and to us, like what being a woman means we're here for you, and we're going to make product to fit the needs that you have. So I think that was really really fun project, really smart project to take on for the brand. Also happened to coincide the launch of all of our rebranding work over the past year and a half. Launched on March 8th, which is International Women's Day, which is how we really like to plan content with a strong moment for women, which was 3 days before, at least on the East Coast of the United States, COVID really kind of took a hold of us, and the world shut down. Our worlds shut down. So that was, kind of the bigger part of that rebranding. And so we haven't actually gotten to see in a normal world, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, so before we jump into some of the work and rework potentially that you guys had to do or pausing in light of COVID, I think you had said something just now that's worth maybe digging a little deeper on in terms of the purpose-driven approach that I think the Keds brand has had in terms of coming up with a creative idea, having a product, and then having a moment. And so the launch of the rebrand was slated for March 8th. You said that was a very specific date. And so is that something that has been historically part of the brand, is to associate tentpole moments with cultural moments, holidays that are tied towards women, or was that part of the actual rebranding effort to bring a fresh perspective to the brand?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think there are moments that any brand likes to lock onto, and I'm really familiar with those tentpole moments coming from sport brands where we talk about the Super Bowl every year in the beginning of February. You know, there are moments that we definitely know we need to talk about. And there, for this brand, especially a women's brand, there are a bunch of female moments that are, you know, important for us to embrace. And not just from it's also important for me, like not just from a product selling or positioning perspective, but also for what does it mean for a brand to actually be there for women who celebrate these moments. So I was really taking a larger look at those tentpole moments and like, what does our brand mean in those moments? So it was, and we actually started it prior to the rebrand. We started creating moments. Actually, one of the bigger moments I think the brand was looking at was more around, you know, if 4 years ago we had our first female president, that's something that our brand should be a part of. It's not political. It's really just being, it's a female president. This could be amazing. So what does that look like as these moments come about? So it's a formula that is replicated by a lot of strong brands out there, and you kind of get as I would say, the best marketing bang for your buck. If you tie all of those things together, you've got a great PR strategy, a great media strategy that's easy to follow because you have these three elements that are bonded.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And so, you know, you talk about bad timing, or in this case, potentially, I think the creative platform that you guys have and had come out with on March 8th really allowed you guys to lean in a little bit around COVID. And so can you talk a little bit about the real moments, real stories, and how maybe there were certain areas or tactics of the launch that you couldn't move forward with, but because the brand really believed in empowering and embracing and, you know, putting a spotlight on real women, that you were able to take that and provide more value to people as they were all trying to understand what to do with shelter at home?
Yeah, absolutely. We are fortunate that our brand, kind of our new platform, and I will say our creative platform that went with the new brand positioning, was all about real women and real stories. So in the past, it had been about models and studios and true influencers, like we had Taylor Swift back in the day. So who are these that we pay a lot of money for, you know, across the board, to have like one or two women that I think people now are smart enough to know that you're paying that woman to talk about your products. So does she really like it, or you know, are you just paying her, you know, to like it? So we wanted to shift away from that model and use real women who had stories. And we wanted to use women from around the globe. And we wanted to use a lot of them. We wanted to use 10 to 20 of them every season to talk about their story, talk about why they love kids, talk about the theme of the season. So for example, in our launch Spring Summer 20, it was all around power. Like, what does power mean to you? And we would tie that woman's story to a product. So our champion is the ultimate sneaker. It's the power sneaker, we call it. It is the original sneaker of 1916. And it's just seen some, you know, tweaks here and there. But as you know, if you saw it today, you'd be like, yes, I definitely wore that as a kid. It's definitely built better now, but it's a shoe we all know and love, right? And so these powerful women have worn that shoe in their lifetime, and there's some nostalgia there, and it gives them a confidence again about, this brand is here for me, and they're letting me tell my story. And even though I don't have 1 million followers on Instagram, like, they care about my story, and they're giving me a platform that other people care about my story. So it was really born out of a need to connect with real women. So we had started that prior to COVID, and we actually pair up a female photographer with our ambassador in their location. We don't do any, the only studio shoots we do are what we need for e-com, like our off model foot crop stuff that you need commercially, but anything for brand storytelling, we actually shoot in a natural environment with our women. And so what that did for us was it allowed us to have content of some of these women already in their home, in a place. We were all now sheltering in our home, and we had content of real women on computers and with their children and with dogs, and like in their day-to-day family life, telling their power stories. And so it really allowed us to lean into that content and we started to shift the stories we were telling and the messaging to be kind of less about like these kind of true power stories and more about like, what is that? How do you transition that now into these complicated times? And how do you still feel that power and connected when you're trying to work from home? You have a 2 and a 4-year-old hanging onto your leg. You need to take the dog out. Your husband's also on Zoom calls. Like, how do you manage that? And so we actually started giving these women also the reins to our channels and saying like, why don't you tell the rest of the kids family and the other kids consumers how you're doing this? So we started to we just opened it up and started to be really transparent with these women that are part of our brand family to tell us what a day in their life looks like. And I think it felt really good for other women to be like, okay, like she appeared to have her stuff together and she's doing the best she can, just like the rest of us, right? And here's a brand that is doing that also. Like we're all doing the best we can. I think we saw some other brands really do that as well, like bring the people that work for them out into the forefront about how we're going through this. So it was good. We rallied around a lot of other brands doing the same thing. It was really actually good to see some of these more female focused brands almost like hold hands and figure out how to message and learn from each other and how to go out and help one another. It's kind of a really interesting, very unfortunate turn of events, but also a very powerful time for women to like realize what they can actually do.
Yeah, it almost seems serendipitous in terms of the ability for you guys to really accentuate this real story, real woman platform that you have and allow the ambassadors, as you call these women, to embrace the brand in a more real, authentic way than maybe consumers had seen in the past. And so had the volume of work, so to speak, that you had engaged them for increased, or did you just start to allow them to, as they wanted to engage, do more? Because I'd imagine, having them take over your social channels wasn't something that was originally in the plan, but just seemed very organic and natural as events started to unfold and you realized that they were in it the same way your customer was and that they could help provide some reassurance and content at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many marketers through that time can relate to having to do a very hard pivot as COVID started to change not only like financial plans for companies, that always impacts marketing, but also the messaging. And so we leaned in, we scrapped a marketing calendar from April through July. Like everything we knew was not going to happen. Like we started to change the products we wanted to talk about. We started to change how we engaged with the ambassadors we had. We reached back out to them for additional pieces of content that, to your point, it wasn't part of the marketing campaign. Like we wouldn't have asked people to, host Ked's family in their home for a day in the life of quarantine with your children, husband, and dog. Like we wouldn't have reached out to women who love the brand and also happen to be personal fitness trainers and want to give the kids' family a workout from their home. Like these are things that in a normal situation we wouldn't have done. But it taught us a lot. And they are things that we're looking at. Like just when the world goes back to whatever normal we end up in, but when it returns, like we should keep these things in mind and not try to go back to like how we were, but also be very flexible and very real and transparent with our consumers, because it did seem to resonate. And these women are real women who do have women's to tell. So you'll see as we go, who have stories to tell. So you'll see as we shift even into autumn, winter 20, as we get into October and November, we have that same strategy in place. We already have women that we've asked to take over. Like, I don't know what that world looks like in October, but as we get closer to that time frame, we'll start to script. So there's a little bit more reactive and real time planning that's happening. And I think a lot of brands are doing that and kind of going through that now as well, where you feel a little bit more like an agency than than you do of this kind of big corporate brand that you have been operating in.
Well, it seems like you guys are set up for success based on the fact that you've already had such experience bringing the content creation process into the home of the ambassadors that you have. Shifting gears just a little, you mentioned something around relooking at the plan, making changes, not doing certain things. Were there products that you were planning on launching that you held back because it just didn't feel right around the timing of COVID? And, you know, understanding you can't hold back products forever and you've got to figure out how to move forward and make sure that there's inventory, whether that's in store or online. What are some of the initiatives, or is there an initiative that you can talk to that you postponed or held off on because it just didn't feel right at the time?
Yeah, we actually, typically March or April, we launch our bridal line, and that didn't, given the time, that didn't feel like the right thing to do, especially as we got later into April, and it felt like we are going to be in quarantine for months, not weeks, as we originally had thought. And we started to hear from the consumer and from like articles and different places that like wedding plans are being postponed till 2021 or like pushed off and venues canceled. And we didn't want our consumer like to have this like FOMO moment of like they're missing out on their own wedding. Like no one wants to feel that. So we shifted that entire line and marketing to late May, early June, when it felt like, okay, we know we're in this, but we actually started to see some virtual weddings take place. We started to see some like kind of quarantined, isolated weddings take place in beaches and parks and, you know, stuff like that. And even now you see weddings happening, but like people have masks, and it's definitely, you know, a socially distanced event with precautions. And so we shifted that line, you know, to be more in touch with the consumer around like, just because like the world is on pause, like love doesn't pause, you know, it's something I can't remember the exact lines of, but there's, you know, there was something about like love isn't canceled, right? Just because plans may be or anything like that. And these are, and honestly, they're sneakers. So they're wedding, you know, they're wedding sneakers that are very appropriate for, you know, for the time. Now we actually started to see some great results by doing that. But it was also, again, being reactive and listening to the consumer and waiting a little bit to make sure we really understood her needs. And I don't think there's any, I think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's truly trying to understand your consumer as she's working through some of these big changes. I mean, think about your wedding. It's a dream, a dream moment for a lot of us. And that hit hard for a lot of women. So it's really, how do we be there to change the messaging and make them feel good about it? Even if, I mean, we had some consumers buy the product and just wear it around their house on their wedding day that now has been pushed out just because because now they're wearing sneakers. So it really is about listening and moving. And we did, and we shifted a bunch of collabs out too that we had, that we used collaborations that we were supposed to launch in June, and really started to push some of those out more towards August around Women's Equality Day, which we talked about another, you know, we had a Jungalow collaboration launch with a Black-owned business out of California, Justina. She's been all over the press in June, especially when Black Lives Matter, the movement that we saw across the country and the globe, like really working with her on messaging and what that looks like. So really shifting product plans and messaging to not just with our consumers, but also with our partners and what they want to do, and being really sensitive to that.
Okay. And so maybe this is a question that's not squarely in the global marketing vein, but I think important to ask, understanding some of the conversation we've just been having. If you think about sectors that have been impacted most as a result of COVID, fashion, in-store retail, for sure, two areas that you see a lot written about in the press. How much have the merchandising or commercial aspect of the business had to change, and were you prepared, understanding that so many purchases for your product were happening in store? Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what you were able to do quickly and things that you're needing to do to, you know, really be more present and relevant for consumers where she's looking for your product, as you speak to the fact that, you know, the COVID isn't going anywhere, but, you know, what does that mean in terms of the shopping experience that the Keds customer has?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part, at least in the United States, is we don't have owned retail, but we do, to your point, have a lot of wholesale partners that our product and our consumer depends on being open. And there's a shift there that happens to all, you know, to all digital. So we saw some wholesale partners who already had a strong hold on their e-com business make that shift. I won't say easily, but we're able to hold on to that and make that shift and start to make up for some of their in-store sales. Unfortunately, so many wholesalers are so big and have so many doors across the country that I don't know if anyone didn't suffer the closure or, you know, the complete complete closure of some of these businesses. And so there was a dramatic shift to online and focusing. So we started to focus our efforts on who's doing online the best of our partners. And that's where we need to start to devote attention to, including our own website, keds.com. So how do we get even
Did you have a DTC business prior, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. And we do. And it's really about how are we able to change keds.com to be more receptive to the consumer? And how do we change the communication that typically goes out from those channels to be more receptive to the consumer? And how do we merchandise things differently? Because she's looking for different types of footwear now. And how do we communicate that across the board? And we have some great products that's where it also helps Keds, is that we're at a lower price point than other fashion sneaker brands. So it helps. So how do we communicate that to her, that this is, you know, kind of an indoor-outdoor sneaker now versus just a fashion brand sneaker. And you do have to work. You have to listen and figure out how your product can fit into her new world, and you have to reach her on those digital channels. So we did start to do some things, you know, in paid media. We started to go after some different consumer targets that we wouldn't have done in the past, that typically our wholesale partners owned. Well, if they're not performing, you know, we ripped the Band-Aid off and would go after those certain consumers that were like lookalikes of our wholesale partners. So we started to do a lot of that and started to see some great success and trying to acquire, you know, some consumers that weren't traditionally Keds.com consumers, but they were our wholesale consumers. So we should be bringing them, you know, into us. So we had some favorable results early on by doing that. And I think as the world starts to get used to this normal, or things start to pick up and go back, I mean, I think it's still a practice we'll look at participating in, because it did benefit us greatly, but it is really focusing and owning your own channel, because that's the house you can protect.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. And so I guess from here we'll transition. We've got a couple questions. So the time that we have left. First one is, where does Pinterest fit into the brand's list of social activities from a priority standpoint? You spoke about the ambassadors and how they create content both for your own channels, but that they're posting as well. Is Pinterest a platform that the brand is currently active in?
Yeah, so Pinterest is actually our number two, Instagram being the first. And I also caught the previous spokesperson from Aveda, and we're working on TikTok as well, I think we're all trying to understand from a brand perspective that platform. But yeah, Pinterest is big for us. One of our collaborators has actually come from being one of the bigger women on Pinterest, Ojoy. She's a DIY phenom, and we love her. We actually just launched her product in July, and she's a big Pinterest, and that's where all of her fans come from. And that's where a lot of our successes have come from, the sneaker world. And we're actually looking at other ways to connect with the Pinterest consumer beyond just shopping. I think we all I love Pinterest personally, but we all use Pinterest in all sorts of ways, right? It's that one platform You can figure out how to cook a Thanksgiving dinner, and you can also figure out, the best leggings post-pregnancy, right? So I think there's a whole bunch of content that can be served up to you. And we're really exploring that DIY space. Like Keds is really set up well when you think about the white champion. To be tight, there are so many DIY videos out there about people like customizing Keds that there's this whole opportunity, especially in Pinterest, to do that. And from a media perspective, Pinterest actually performs really, really well for us. Our woman is on Pinterest, so it actually works really well. It's something we definitely do not ignore.
Okay. Well, so you spoke about advertising on Pinterest, and you said female, then women. From an audience demographic standpoint, this is another question, but I think it's a good follow on to the Pinterest one, but it's not necessarily about Pinterest. Are you being more inclusive as the industry grows and evolves? You talk about being a women's brand. I remember wearing Keds as a child. I know there is the kids collection, but when you think about there's your target audience, the women that we've been speaking a lot about, but what other demographics does the brand target, and how is that evolving over time?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people don't know. I mean, we do have a kids line that is Keds, from crib to little fifth graders, right? And then we have another brand, Grasshoppers, that's actually more of a comfort line that we are looking to bring back into the Keds family that services an older consumer. And then we have Pro Keds, and Pro Keds has long been a male, the kind of male counterpart to Keds. And I also oversee Pro Keds, and there's a beautiful unisex story of footwear within Pro Keds as well that actually hits almost a younger consumer also. And so with COVID came some great opportunities for us to really look at the lines of products that we have, and how do we position them under a full Keds umbrella that is more inclusive. That yes, Keds is like, we make these shoes for the female foot, right? Like it is, there is a lot of design and a lot of testing that goes in. Female feet are made, we're built differently, not just in our feet, but we are made different. So our footwear should react to the way our feet are made, and that's a huge bonus for Keds. But we also have a line that she does like and he loves, within Pro Keds, and we also do have traditional Keds that he loves as well. So how do we start to blur those lines? And I think that's actually really where that our original tagline came from, of made for women, whatever that means. Whatever that means to you, these shoes they're all made for everyone. And I think it's important. And we are looking at how we refine that. We're taking this time to really figure out, maybe we're not even the brand we thought we were supposed to be in 2020, because COVID has changed that, and people have changed, and you look at the unrest and there's a lot of things going on. Mm-hmm. So how do we come out of this on the other side, ready for that and really listening to what people want? So we still have some work to do. We still have, some work ahead of us to really be as inclusive as we possibly can. And I think that's being very transparent with our consumers, and also letting that feedback come in to us and reworking not just the product line, but also our brand messaging.
Great. Welcome back, Nina.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for closing out such an amazing day. It was super, super interesting. And definitely the way to end the Fashion and Beauty Day. So thanks, Kelly and Jessica. And a special thank you to all of our speakers today for such engaging and insightful conversations. I know I took a lot from today, whether it's the questions about Pinterest or how to engage directly with consumers, how we're all using influencers, and most importantly, evolving our 2020 plans based on the wild world we live in right now and the unknown that's ahead of us. So we hope that you will all join us again for our next Brand Innovators livecast tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Brand Innovators livecast on the future of media, gaming, sports, and esports. So we'll be joined by market leaders from Hulu, Bose, Resident, WPP, and more. And we thank everyone who joined us today, and we can't wait to see you again tomorrow. So thanks again, everyone. Bye.